Hello, everyone. This is the 66th episode of the Soccernostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles, and I'm joined by Paul from Shipley in England. For this episode, we interview Italian author and former freelance journalist Mr. Davide Eskelund Rota as we discuss the matches of the Denmark national team during the 1979-80 season and the start of the Sepp Piontek era. Mr. Rota is a former freelance journalist from Biella in Italy, currently living in Odense in Denmark since 2013, working as a languages teacher. He is also the author of Denmark 1908-2018, chronicling the history of the Danish national team.
It's a pleasure to me to talk with you, Shahan, and to you, Paul. And I'm ready to ask you your questions about Danish football history.
Thank you very much for joining us. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us about your early football memories and your history with the game?
Yes, as I am almost 53 years old, I remember something about the 70s. So my really first football memory is about stickers in the World Cup 74, about the Munich edition. One of the first memories is about stickers because I strangely remember the difficult name of the Germans, of the West Germans. For example, names like Holzenbein, Schwarzenbeck, Beckenbauer, they were too long names for the Italian culture. So it was to me like a challenge as I was only 5 years old to try to pronounce these difficult names about Germany, West Germany. But I liked also German style about playing football in that period. West Germany was a very, very good team. And I remember also in 76, I was very, very upset when Germany lost the European Cup, the penalty in the shootout against Czechoslovakia. So I remember I was crying because I was supporting West Germany very well. But in few years, it came a new passion, a new interest about Danish. Don't ask me why, because it's something strange. I was crazy about Alan Simonsen, about other players. And I was in the beginning to start something. It was not only about Danish football, but also about Danish culture, Danish welfare. I was very, very curious to know how to live in another country. And I chose Denmark because it was maybe one of the best as a lifestyle. And I always say to myself, one day when I'm not good anymore to live in Italy, I have to start. I need a new begin. Denmark will be my country. And that it happened. It happened 8 years ago when I chose to move definitely in Denmark after many, many trips. And now I'm still living here. I have a family. I'm very happy. And I don't think to go back in Italy only for holidays. That's in short is my story.
Can you describe the state of Danish football in the fall of 1979 that had led to the removal of Kurt Nielsen and the appointment of Sepp Piontek?
Yes, I have to say in that period, Denmark was living something very important, a very important changing, but unconsciously, because many things was happening in the Denmark football history in that period. From 71, when Denmark lose 5-0 in Portugal, a game, qualification game, but it was the first game when Denmark can use the players they were playing abroad. Before, it was not possible. When you decide to move abroad, it happened to famous names like John Hansen, like Harald Nielsen. You were not allowed to play in the national team. It was a period where players were punished by the federation. So in 71, federation, after poor results in qualifications games in World Cup 70 and the European Cup 68, decide to open again to the players they play in Holland, Germany, Italy, and England, especially. So from 71, it was the first step to open again Denmark about step next to the professional. Danish football was one of the last in Europe to change from amateurism to professionalism. It happened only in 78 because there were two men. They were threatening Denmark Federation to make a new league if Denmark Federation don't open for a contract football, for professional football. They were Harald Nielsen, the former Bologna attacker, Italian top scorer, and Helge Sander. Helge Sander was a former player in the first division. They were planning a new league in Denmark, an alternative league, and they invested many money in the Danish football. It was the period where a big sponsor, they tried to invest in Danish football and in the Danish national team, like, for example, the beer giant Carlsberg. With this money, a small club like Herning in the third division could buy a big name for the championship. The big name was Bobby Moore, the former English national team captain. He played 7-8 games for Herning in Denmark third division. Of course, he was old in the end of the career. So after these signals, Denmark in 78 decided to open for professionalism. But the coach of the national team was still much amateur. He was Kurt Nielsen. Kurt Nielsen was a nice person, a nice man, but he has some methods, very amateur. For example, to train the team with himself as a coach, masseur. He was also the keeper of the stadium because it was his job. It was him to buy the beers for the players. That was not good enough. So the federation decided in 79 to have a professional coach. And between the secretary, Erik Hulstrup, they contacted the German federation because they knew the German federation has a lot of good coaches to send there in Denmark a big a coach who can change the Denmark thinking about football, Sepp Piontek.
It's strange that Denmark was struggling because you had the likes of Allan Simonsson at Borussia Mönchengladbach, youngsters like Soren Lerby and Frank Arneson at Ajax, and many others who were doing well in very good leagues, but somehow the national team was still struggling.
Yes, I agree. Because Danish talents, they were so many in that period, but they have to move out abroad to express, to grow up their talents, their skills. Also, Danish national team has good players, but they couldn't meet so often. Also, the coach was not good enough to watch them in other leagues, in other countries. He was still standing in Denmark. With the changing about Kurt Nielsen and Sepp Piontek with his own car was traveling around Europe to watch the league games and to choose, because Denmark in that period has so many good players in the best European leagues. Not Italy, because Italy was still closed for foreign players, but Germany, West Germany, England, Holland, and Belgium. So Sepp Piontek take his car to go around every weekend to watch Soren Lerby, Frank Arneson, and to understand how to use in the better way these skills, these talented players.
And what were the expectations from the press and public regarding the appointment of Sepp Piontek and the expectations for the remaining Euro qualifiers?
For the two games about Euro qualifiers, they were honestly not too much expectation because Denmark was already out, almost out. They need a miracle. They need to win in Wembley. They need to win in Sofia, the last two games. And Denmark at that point had 13 goals against in the other games against Ireland, Northern Ireland, and England too. So they were scoring a lot of goals, but that they were conceding a lot of goals. So 13 goals in 6 games is not good. But the press was, of course, waiting as many expectations for the next campaign, for the World Cup 82. So they give to Sepp Piontek a period of trial to build a new team, to build a strong team. But they were expecting good results from 82 campaign about the World Cup in Spain.
Can you talk about the background of West German manager Sepp Piontek?
Yes, of course. He's a very, very creative and volcanic man, Sepp Piontek, Josef Emanuel Hubertus Piontek. Piontek was born in a town, the name today is Wrocław in Poland, but at that time was Breslau in Germany, a town where there was many bombs about World War II. So he grew up in a ruins panorama about bombing in World War II, but the family moved in Bremen, in another side of Germany, or West Germany. And Sepp Piontek started to play as a libero in Werder Bremen, where he played from 63 to 72. And he played about 203 Bundesliga games and 6 times in the national team. He was a good rival to Franz Beckenbauer for the place as a libero in the national team, but they were also friends outside of the pitch. After a long career as a good player in Bundesliga, Sepp Piontek has an attitude to coach. He was very good to talk with the players, to take the best from his players. So he started to coach Werder Bremen, and then only for one season, Fortuna Düsseldorf. But he was trying to experiment something new, to travel in new land, in new countries. And he was called as a national team coach in an exotic country, Haiti. Haiti in 1976 was 2 years after the World Cup in Germany. And they need a German coach because they had a good team, but they need discipline. And the dictator of Haiti in that period asked to the German Federation a good coach, and they sent Sepp Piontek as a coach as to make experience with the talented but undisciplined players. He was good, he had good results, but he was returning in Germany, in West Germany, in 1978 to coach the second club in Hamburg, St. Pauli. And there he was thinking to change his job with a better national team because he was good to put together very good players that they never played together before. So it came as an offer from the Danish Federation, from the secretary and Erik Hulstrup. And Piontek accepted this offer. It was not economically very, very strong offer, but it was interesting because, as I said, Denmark had a lot of good players, but they were not good to express their talent. Until that, Sepp Piontek knew only two players from Denmark. They played together in Werder Bremen. Ole Bjørn Møse from Odense, my town. He was playing in Werder Bremen from 1966 to 1971. And Per Røntved. Per Røntved was the libero of Werder Bremen and was a good friend with Sepp Piontek. So when Piontek accepted the offer from the Danish Federation, asked to Røntved many, many things about Danish football. And in 1979, he was national team coach of Denmark.
So let's go through Sepp Piontek's first match in charge of Denmark. On August 29th, as part of the Nordic Cup, Finland hosted Denmark at Mikkeli. For this first match, you'd have many international debutants. In goal, you have the international debutant Ole Kvist, who'd be part of the 1984 Euros adventure from KB. You have Ole Højgaard of KB. Another debutant, Poul Andersen of Odense. Captain of the side, Stan Ziegler of Hvidovre. Another international debutant, Frank Olsen of AGF Aarhus. Jens Jorn Bertelsen of Esbjerg. Klaus Norregaard of KB. Ove Flintbjerg of Aalborg. Making his international debut and his only match for Denmark, Poul Erik Ostergaard of Whittle. Another international debutant playing in his only match, Finn Trykker of Aalborg. He'd replaced by Henrik Skubo of Knivstad in the 50th minute. This would be Skubo's third and final cap for Denmark. His first cap had been 1977. And finally, another international debutant, Klaus Berggren of Lyngby, who would be an integral part of the 1984 and 1986 Denmark sides, and also would play in Roma in Italy, among others.
Ole Kvist was a very good goalkeeper, but in that team, they played in Mikkeli in Finland. It was called because it was a team only with local players from the Danish league. Sepp Piontek started to talk with the press and said that to build a good team, I have to start with the local players before to call the players they are playing in Holland, Belgium, and whatever. So Ole Kvist at that moment was the best goalkeeper in Danish league, but he was playing in second division because KB in English, the big team in Copenhagen, was relegated in the last season. Ole Kvist was an amateur player, and his job was a motorbike cup. So he was in the police. And he was very loyal to his job, and he was very loyal to his club. So he never moved from Kobe to a big team in Germany, Holland, where he had the good offers. He was 29 years when he made his debut in the national team, and his father was a famous cartoonist in Copenhagen. Ole Kvist was a very good player, a very good goalkeeper in the goal, about long shots, about staying in the post. On the contrary, the other local goalkeeper, Ole Kjær, we will talk about him later. Ole Kjær was better in high balls from cross, from corners, and so on. But Ole Kvist was a very good, loyal player and was a very good, loyal comrade. So Sepp Piontek had from the start a good relationship with him. It was very, very helpful. The second one is Claus Berggren. Claus Berggren, that period, was playing as a forward. He was playing as a forward in a small club called Lyngby in English, Lyngby in Danish. And he scored many, many goals in the third division where he was a top scorer. And it was in the first game in the national team, he was an attacker, very, very running attacker. He was playing all game about running from side to side of the game. But after this game, he was called again from Piontek to play in the national team. And he said, no, because I can't the next time, because I booked a holiday in Lanzarote in Spain with my wife, with my girlfriend. Then it was his wife, and I'm busy. I can't play in the national team. Sepp Piontek was, of course, very, very upset about that. And he said, no, you don't play no more in the national team because it's very amateur. You have to represent your country and you travel for a holiday in Spain. That's not possible. So for 4 years, Claus Berggren was not called in the national team. The second cup was only in 1983 when he was moved in Italy to play as a right side in Pisa in a small team. He was played, we Italians, we say the position was a tornante. So he was half attacker in the right side. And after that, he was very good in Italy, in Pisa before and later in Roma, as you said, and in Torino too. He had again a chance to play in the national team. And then he became very, very important because he was a player very good to cover different mentions. For example, in 84, he will mark Michel Platini in the famous game against France as a mediano, as a half. And he was playing in different positions. It was very possible to use him in different roles. So Kvist and Berggren, but not only them, also Jens Jørn Bertelsen, were in that game in Mikkeli, where Denmark made only 0-0 result, but it was not important because it was for the Nordic Championship, and the Danish press was not so excited about the Nordic Championship. Only the game against Sweden was important because it was like a derby. So these two, Kvist, Berggren, and also Jens Jørn Bertelsen from Esbjerg, in that period was the first game with Piontek, but later we will meet them many, many times in many games as a crucial role in the national team.
And what about the captain of this team, Sten Ziegler?
Yeah, Sten Ziegler was a very good player as a central defender, also as a midfield. But he was a little older and the others, and he was in the last phase of his career. In that period, the future libero of the team, Morten Olsen, was playing as a midfield. So Sten Ziegler was a captain and was a very good general of the defense, but he didn't play so much in Ajax when he moved after Whittle, and was not more used until 1980, 1981 because of anographical problems. Of course, he was already over 30 years old. And so later, Sepp Piontek decided to move Morten Olsen in the libero position instead of Sten Ziegler and before Per Røntvedt.
The next match would be Euro qualifier at Wembley against England on September 12th, 1979. For this match, we have the following lineup. Birger Jensen of Club Brugge in Belgium, Ole Højgaard of KB, Soren Busk of MVV in Holland, Sten Ziegler, captain of the side from Hvidovre, Morten Olsen of Molenbeek in Belgium, Soren Lerby of Ajax in Holland, Frank Arnesen of Ajax in Holland, Benny Nielsen of Anderlecht in Belgium. He'll be replaced by Jens Jørn Bertelsen of Esbjerg in the 60th minute, Henning Jensen of Ajax in Holland, Alan Simonsson of Barcelona in Spain, Preben Elker of Lokeren in Belgium, and he replaced by Ove Flintberg of Aalborg in the 80th minute. This was Flintberg's final cap, his 18th and final cap. His first cap had been in 1970. For this match, England would win 1-0, Kevin Keegan scoring in the 17th minute. But as you said, England had more or less qualified and Denmark were out of the running. So it was more or less a practice match for Piontek.
Yes, it was, but Denmark played very well that game, and it was not deserved, the defeat, because of the referee. The referee made a couple of big mistakes. He didn't give a penalty kick to Denmark because Søren Lerby was in the box when he had a fault against Mick Mills from England. And the English goal was also irregular because Kevin Keegan had the ball after Højgaard was tackled another fault. So the Portuguese referee, Correia, was not courageous enough to give a penalty to Denmark because there were 90,000 people in Wembley. So maybe if it was in another stadium, Denmark had a regular penalty kick. So Denmark also had a chance to make a draw because Bertelsen take a post in that game. So, of course, the lineup is very different from the game in Mikkeli because they were almost professional players in that game. Only Højgaard or Flint Bjerg or Jens Bertelsen were from the Danish league. But Denmark has a good review from the press in that game. For the first time, they were playing against England, the giant England, with the head up and without fear. So it was a good signal because Danish press begin to say Piontek is the right man for the Danish national team.
So let's talk about some of these key players that played in this match. And as you mentioned, were mostly playing for the top leagues in Europe. You have Birger Jensen, Søren Busk, Morten Olsen, who had made his debut as far back as 1970, Søren Lerby, Frank Arnesen, Benny Nielsen, Henning Jensen, Allan Simonsson, and Preben Elkjær. What can you talk about these players around this time?
They were big names in the European football. Birger Jensen, the goalkeeper, was the goalkeeper of Bruges in the Champions League at the time, European Cup final in Rome, and was a very big star and probably the best Danish goalkeeper in that period. But he was also he had also a difficult relationship with Piontek because he was always late in the trainings. Piontek, for the first time, was introducing meetings about the players. They were coming from Belgium, Holland, and Germany. And Birger Jensen didn't like that. So soon, Piontek and Birger Jensen had a very, very discussion. And Birger Jensen was not more in the team. Piontek preferred Ole Kvist or Ole Kjær instead of him. Lerby, Arnesen, the twins from Ajax, they moved together from Fremad Amager in the start of the 70s. They don't need any presentations. Søren Lerby, with left foot, with socks down, was a key player in the Ajax in that period. And Arnesen also was a fantastic midfield, offensive and defensive at the same time, with a strong personality. Søren Lerby was a son of a player in the ball club in 1903 in Copenhagen. His father was from Kai, from that club. He was an attacker in the 60s. Frankie Arnesen was the son of the keeper of the stadium in the Amager, in the Copenhagen's banlieue, and the mother was from Faroe Highlands. The other players, Henning Jensen. Henning Jensen was a star in Real Madrid, in Borussia Mönchengladbach, and later in Ajax. Henning Jensen in Denmark, when he died, it was celebrated as an icon because also there was brought a book about him, The Football Angel, inspired to his style to jump in the head. He scored a goal with the head in an international game with all the best players in Europe. And then Allan Simonsen, best player in Europe with Borussia in 77. But last but not least, Preben Elkjær. Preben Elkjær was a shooting star, was very young at that period. He's born in 57, so he was only 22, but he had already played for Köln in Germany when he had Hannes Weisweiler, some coach, a very hard and strong coach. And he was just moved to Lokeren in Belgium. Preben Elkjær was one of the key players with the Sepp Piontek era because in the start was a very bad boy. He smoked cigarettes and drinking beer in the changing room. When he started the Piontek, in the start they had a lot of conflicts, but then they became very good friends because Preben Elkjær was a strong attacker, was a big center forward. And his life changed when he met his actually wife in Lokeren in Belgium, Nicole, an hairdresser. After this, he was better in discipline and in professional style to play football. A joke about Elker and Piontek. Elker, I saw him talking in a conference, and he told to the publicum, Sepp Piontek, when he came, we were much afraid about him because they say it comes a new German coach, discipline, tactic, and he talks 8 different languages. After a while, I say to him directly, hey, Sepp, you are very good to talk different languages. You talk 8 languages, but you talk all together. I don't understand what you say. So, of course, it was a joke, but people was laughing about that. And Elker and Piontek are still very, very good friends now.
Just a couple of weeks later, on September 26th, Denmark faced Finland again as part of the Nordic Cup, this time at Copenhagen. For this match, we have the following lineup. Birger Jensen of Club Brugge in Belgium. Ole Højgaard of KB, playing in his 5th and final cap. All his caps were 1979. Soren Busk of MVV in Holland. Sten Ziegler, captain of the side from Hvidovre. Morten Olsen of Molenbeek in Belgium. Frank Arnesen of Ajax. Soren Lerby of Ajax. He replaced by Tommy Christiansen of Go Ahead Eagles in Holland in the 46th minute. This was his 2nd and final cap for Denmark, for Christiansen. Henning Jensen of Ajax, Jens Jorn Bertelsen of Esbjerg, Kristen Nygaard of AZ67 Alkmaar in Holland, and Preben Elker of Lokeren. This match, Denmark won 1-0, and Preben Elker scored in the 53rd minute.
And he scored with a fantastic head, jumping, and it was similar to Roberto Bettega and Paolo Pulici. So a diving heading. And it was the only goal of the match. Denmark didn't play so well. They also missed a penalty kick in the last minute with Christian Nygaard from AZ 76 Holland. But people was not happy that time. People was a bit upset because they pretend Denmark to score more goals. But Sepp Piontek said to the press after the game, why you are so triste, why you are so unhappy now? Because I'm still building my team about the defense. And today I used the Søren Busk from Maastricht, Holland. Søren Busk was a very, very key player in the future, became a very key player in the Piontek's defense. It's very funny because Søren Busk started as a forward in Westphalia Herne in Germany, where he scored also 12 goals in a season. But then he was moved in the defense as a stopper. And then he formed together with Ivan Nielsen from Feyenoord, a very, very hard couple of central defenders. The nickname Sepp Piontek gave to Søren Busk and Ivan Nielsen was the 2 Doberman dog, because they were very aggressive and they had a strong personality. Søren Busk played always with a big mustache. So he was also, like Ivan Nielsen, the 2 mustache players in defense, and they were very important. So still, Sepp Piontek was building his team starting from the defense.
These were the early days, and as you say, Sepp Piontek starting to make some changes. What were the main changes that he made in the team's tactics and the general preparation of the group that were different from what had gone before?
The main change was about the speed of the game, because Denmark before was very, very low to move the ball. It's not important with tactical attitude they had, because they changed the different systems from 4-4-2 in that start. Later they played with 4-3-3 with Simonsen, Bastrup and Elker together in the game, with Simonsen right wing, Bastrup central and Elker left wing. So it was courageous to play in this way. But then again with 4-4-2, because Berggren was the tornante in the Italian style, in the Italian culture. So they were playing only with Michael Laudrup and Preben Elker as a forward. So the very important changing was the speed, together with a professional attitude outside of the game, and together with the attitude to help together in the pitch all the players, also in the defensive phase. Before it was only defenders are defenders and attackers are attackers. So that was new in that period in the Piontek's national team.
Next, we have Denmark's last qualifier for the 1980 Euros. On October 31st, they traveled to Sofia to face Bulgaria. For this match, we have the following lineup. Ole Kvist, Jens Steffensen of Bayer Uerdingen in West Germany, Soren Busk, Sten Ziegler, captain of the side, Frank Olsen, Frank Arnesen, Soren Lerby, Jens Jorn Bertelsen, Christian Nygaard. He'd be replaced by Carsten Nielsen of Borussia Mönchengladbach in West Germany in the 64th minute. This was Nielsen's fourth and final cap. His first cap had been in 1975. Then we have Henning Jensen and Allan Simonsson. Denmark would lose this match 3-0. Andrei Jeliaskov scored in the 21st minute, and Shavdar Zetkov scored in the 51st and 87th minutes.
Oh, I have to say that game was not so important for the Danish national team history because it was the last game of the group or the pool, and Piontek made some experiments in that game where he was playing a different style with three attackers, three forward together. They were not clear to support this system. It's typical from Denmark, don't play with attention, with focus. Some games, they don't have a big importance for the pool. Denmark was already last team in the pool. And for example, it happened also in the 84 when they lost 6-0 in Holland before the European Cup in France. So they were not motivated enough to support the game. And it was also in a period in October where the big leagues in Europe, they were starting to fight to be in the best moment. So that game, it was just a final closing of the pool of the European Championship campaign. And then the head was to start the better way the next campaign about World Cup 82.
As we mentioned before, there was really no prospect of qualifying for the Euros. But with two qualifiers already lost, how did the public and the press react at this point?
Someone was hoping, someone was about skepticism. They said maybe Piontek is not the right man to us, but we have to wait. We have to give him a chance, another chance to build a team, to set together all the players from different leagues. And we have to wait another campaign because Carl Nielsen had 3 years to stay in the national team as a coach from 76 to 79. So Piontek is just arrived. The two last games of the European campaign was not so important. Now we start a new era. Let's see what happens. And give to Piontek carte blanche to travel around the Europe, to choose the better players, because Denmark are not only the big names, has not only Elkjær Simonsen, but also other players that they play in France, in Switzerland, and in Austria, for example. And they can be a very good support reservists of the national team 11. But at that time, Piontek has not yet chosen the structure, the key players of the national team. He has to experiment more, and then more Nordic Championship games to help him to test the players for his philosophy.
Denmark ended the calendar year 1979 with a friendly against Spain at Cadiz on November 14th. For this match, we have Birger Jensen playing in his final match for Denmark, his 19th and final cap. His first cap had been 1973. Making his international debut, but also playing in his only match for Denmark, we have Pal Hansen of KB. He'd be replaced by Klaus Noregaard in the 58th minute. Soren Busk, captain of the side Sten Ziegler, Frank Olsen, Jens Jorn Bertelsen, Morten Olsen, Christian Nygaard of AZ67 Alkmaar playing in his 30th and final cap for Denmark. His first cap had been 1970. Benny Nielsen of Anderlecht, Jan Sorensen of Club Brugge in Belgium, and Preben Elkjær. Denmark won this match 3-1. Preben Elkjær scored the first goal in the 38th minute. Jens Jorn Bertelsen scored in the 55th minute. Spain pulled the goal back a minute later through Meza. And Preben Elkjær scored his second goal and Denmark's third in a 76th minute. So already signs of progress.
It was a big surprise. But if you read between the lines, you can understand Spain was not a so good team in that period. They were not good in the European Cup in Italy in 80, and they were disastrous in 82 in the World Cup home in Spain. But Denmark played very well in the counterattacks. Elkjær scored 2 goals in a fantastic run to the Spanish goal. In the first one, he was also dribbling the goalkeeper Arconada, and he was shooting in the empty goal. It was a big surprise because Denmark in that game was without Allan Simonsen, without Søren Lerby, and without Frankie Arnesen. So big names there were not. They played with Benny Nielsen from Anderlecht. Benny Nielsen was not always free to play in the national team because Anderlecht many times said no to Sepp Piontek, to the call in the national team. And Jan Sørensen was also a big surprise in the starting 11. Jan Sørensen was a left-foot player. Played many years in Bruges, in Belgium, and many years in Holland. Spain had a good reputation, and Denmark was not. They were not hoping to win in Spain. Of course, it was a friendly game, but it was a big surprise. And Denmark has an authority in the game, in the pitch, never showed before. So the press begin to say, okay, now something good is starting. But we have to wait a little more because we have a new game against Spain in Denmark, in the Idræts Park and in Copenhagen in the spring. So maybe that will be a big test because we meet the same team for 2 times, few months, and then we can see if our team is good enough to play the big tournaments, European and World Cup.
Denmark would have to wait many months to play its next match, more than 6 months. Their next match would be on May 7th, 1980, as part of the Nordic Cup when they travel to Gothenburg with Sweden hosting Denmark. For this match, we have Ole Kvist, Jens Steffensen. He'd be replaced by Per Rontved of Randers in the 65th minute. Soren Busk, Sten Ziegler, captain of the side, Frank Olsen, Morten Olsen, Jens Jorn Bertelsen. He'd be replaced by international debutant Thomas Larsen of BK 1903, Klaus Noregard, Lars Bastrup of AGF Aarhus, Preben Elkjær, and Allan Simonsson. Denmark would win this match 1-0 with Jens Steffensen scoring in the 13th minute.
Yes, a very big win because Denmark and Sweden, as I said, are very big rivals. In a famous series of movies in Denmark, there's also a game between comic movies, a game between Denmark and Sweden in the TV. So Danish people is very happy when they win against Sweden. And it happened twice in the last 4 years, in 76 after a long wait, and now in 80. The only goal of the games was scored by right back Jens Steffensen from Bayer Uerdingen in Germany, in West Germany. Was a bigger surprise, but Denmark was much disciplined in the pitch. They scored, they waited the Swedish to counterattack. They were never losing the head. But Ole Kvist in that game was fantastic. Ole Kvist saved a lot of shoots from Swedish attackers. And it was a big challenge for him because he was playing against a monument of the goalkeeping like Ronnie Hellström in Sweden. So it was like an example, an icon to him. And Ronnie Hellström was also good because he stopped many conclusions, many shoots about the Danish attackers. But in that game, Denmark continues his clean sheets in the tournament, in the Nordic Cup 78-80, and Denmark won that tournament for the first time after many years. And the press was confident, was hoping to give better, to have a very solid national team. And step by step, it was happening. We will talk also about some important players they played in that game against Sweden in Göteborg.
The couple of players that have come into the squad for this game, you've got Per Rontved, who would captain the side, and Lars Bastrup. Are these the key players for the future?
Yes, Per Røntved, as I said, was a very good friend with Sepp Piontek. They played together in Werder Bremen, and Piontek later was his coach in Werder Bremen. But later, Røntved, because of some physical problems, was back in Denmark to play in a not big team, Randers Freja, and in the second division. But Piontek never forgot him. And when he needed him to go back in the national team, he was calling him, come back because I need a player with experience like you to play as a libero, but also in the midfield. Per Røntved played for 75 times in the Danish national team. It was a record in that period. Before him, it was Christian Biella from a Belgian team. He played 61. So it was a record for Røntved. Røntved was a very key player in the defense. And later, unfortunately, Røntved had again some physical and health problems. He had also a stroke in the 80s when he was stopped to play. And for Danish people, Per Røntved is like a significant and a symbol of the Danish national team. Lars Bastrup was a very strange type. He was a very good player, very good, fast, and scoring many goals with Hamburger in Germany. The first spell abroad was in Germany in the second division with Kickers Offenbach, but it was not good. So he was back in Denmark in the AGF, and then against in Germany, in West Germany, and he reached to play the European Cup final with Hamburg against Juventus, the famous 1-0 when scored Magat, the only goal of the game. But he was also a strange type. Also him, he was back after the cup final to play with an amateur team in the northern Jylland, Skovbakken. And then he was against in the Danish first division. He was not so happy to play football. He started thinking. He is much religious, and now when he stopped to play, he made a group about people following a religion, like a sept. He's outside from the newspapers. Interview is not more public. He's a very private person. It was good in the pitch, but very, very private and difficult to talk with him as a coach, to explain how to move in the field. But in that period, in 79 and also in 80, was probably the best forward in the Danish national team. Better than Preben Elkjær, because Preben Elkjær was not already clear to play difficult games in Europe against the big teams like Germany, West Germany, England, or France. Lars Bastrup was a bit better in that period. Røntved or Bastrup, they make their first game with Piontek, and then they stay in the roster for a long, long time.
A couple of weeks later, on May 21st, Denmark hosted Spain at Copenhagen. For this match, we have Ole Kvist, Jens Steffensen. He'll be replaced by Klaus Norregaard in the 46th minute. Søren Busk, captain of the side Stan Ziegler, Frank Olsen, Morten Olsen, Jens Jorn Bertelsen, Benny Nielsen. He'll be replaced by Thomas Larsen. This was his second and final cap. Thomas Larsen replaced Benny Nielsen in the 66th minute. So then Lars Bastrup, Allan Simonsson, and Jan Sorensen. Spain would take the lead in the 9th minute. Allan Simonsson would tie the match in the 53rd minute. Bastrup would score Denmark's second in the 60th minute. And Jose Alessanco would tie the match in the 71st minute. So match ended as 2-2.
Yes, Denmark played very well against Spain. Maybe the 2-2 result was not deserved. Spain lined only in the 79 minutes with Alessanco. And it was a big surprise because Denmark was dominated the game against Spain. So it was a new demonstration about the power of the Danish national team. Now they can compete, they can play against the big names, and they have no problems about fear or personality. And if you read the team, then starting 11, Allan Simonsson is back in the national team. Allan Simonsson scored a fantastic goal in this game. So the Parken was very, very happy. 24,000 people, they clapped Denmark national team because for the first time after a long time, Denmark was in the game, was an authority and demonstrating they were very good and they can have a place in the 82 campaign, in the 82 World Cup in Spain.
Denmark concluded the season on June 4th, again as part of the Nordic Cup, when they hosted Norway at Copenhagen. For this match, we have Ole Kvist. He replaced by Ole Kjær of Esbjerg in the 46th minute. Jens Steffensen, Ole Rasmussen of Hertha Berlin in West Germany. He replaced by Benny Nielsen in the 62nd minute. Per Rontved, captain of the side Frank Olsen, Morten Olsen, Soren Lerby, Frank Arnesen, Lars Bastrup. He replaced by Jan Sorensen in the 77th minute. This was Sorensen's final cap for Denmark, his 11th and the final cap. His first cap had been 1977. Preben Elkjær and Allan Simonsson. Norway would take the lead through Halvard Thorsen in the 20th minute. Benny Nielsen would tie the match with a penalty kick in the 68th minute. Frank Arntzen would score in the 70th minute, and Preben Elkjær in the 76th minute for a 3-1 Denmark win.
Yes, it's right. Norway dominated the first half, and not only because of the goal of Kolshaugen, but also because it was disallowed another goal to Alvar Thoresen from the referee from Holland. And in the 35 minutes, it's not written in every chronicle, but Ole Kvist stopped with a penalty kick from Arne Larsen Økland. So the first half time was a disaster. The people in the park and was fearing defeat against Norway and was fearing to lose the Nordic Championship because Denmark was fighting. It was the last game. But I can't imagine what happened in the changing room in the break. Piontek was a very authoritarian coach. And then I can imagine him talking with his strange Danish with German accent, talking to the team and say to them like he was always saying, ambition, organisation, concentration. So it was his motto to stimulate the players. He was authoritarian, but also very good in psychology with the players. So after the break, Denmark was transformed, was in the game, running, fighting, and playing very well. And in few minutes, penalty kick scored by Benny Nielsen just came in the game. And then Arnesen Elkjær, so was a very, very easy second half time for Danish team. But it was also interesting to say Denmark won the Nordic Championship for the first time. And it was, of course, confident for the future because in the next fall, the new campaign for Spain, 82, started. So the press was this time waiting and patient in the break because they knew Denmark can change this game very easily. Just need to be stimulated from the coach, and it happened.
Let's discuss another player, Ole Rasmussen, who would be in the setup for the years to come. What can you say about him?
Ole Rasmussen was important because after many changing was fast in the position of the right back. And before there was Ole Højgaard from Kobe KB. And Højgaard was injured. He never played more for the national team. So Piontek tried to use Jens Steffensen from Uerdingen, but he was not completely satisfied. And Jens Steffensen scored a goal against Sweden. So Ole Rasmussen was a regular player, never down of his level. He was a silent player. He was in Hertha Berlin in Germany. The only thing was Piontek was not so happy because he was always in the bench in the Hertha Berlin. But after this period, Ole Rasmussen was back in Denmark as an amateur in Odense, and then back in Berlin when Hertha was relegated in second division. And then he had a fast place in the starting 11. So Ole Rasmussen was important for the stability of the defense. Now Piontek, he was thinking only of the right back to find good players, good enough. And in the start, he was thinking to use Søren Lerby as a right back. But Søren Lerby was too much offensive and he was too much out from the position to attack. So he was thinking something different. And in the moment where the right back was Frank Olsen from AGF Aarhus. And it was important for AGF fans because they were 13 years before the last AGF players for the national team played. in the starting 11. So it was good news, but Frank Olsen was also not good enough for Piontek. He asked him to move in a big club, to move maybe in Copenhagen, and he said, no, thank you, because I prefer to stay here in Aarhus, because I have to need to complete my education as a pedagogue. Something is more stable, more stability in the right back, but not yet in the left back. So after Frank Olsen, a new player came. But in that game, Denmark was good enough in the second half to win the tournament and to convince the press to continue in this way with Piontek.
Can you discuss the general tactics and style of the national team in this first season under Sepp Piontek?
Yes, as I said before, it was very important, the speed of the game, the speed of the ball, the circulation. And a key player in the midfield was Jens Jørn Bertelsen. He was not big physically, he was not tall, but it was him to start every single action, to decide if the action was to the right or to the left, and every action pass through his feet. So Jens Jørn Bertelsen played almost his career in Denmark for Esbjerg, but when he was 30, he decided to move out of the country, in Belgium before, Sereng, but also in France, and to finish 35 in Switzerland. But the tactics, as I said, was different from game to game. Piontek was a bit like Berzot in Italy. Berzot's philosophy was to say, we meet every different team with a different tactic, because we have to play faster against the Germans because they are not so fast. So we have to play it not technically with the Brazilians because the Brazilians, they are too good. So we have to play it in the counter-attack. So every team has a different approach for Berzot, but for Piontek too. They were very similar in that way. So every game was prepared with a lot of attention and details from Piontek. He was, before the game, asking to every player, you play right back, you play against this player, Søren Busk, you are right back, you play against Kevin Keegan. Be careful because Keegan he usually move from side to side, follow him. So detailed instructions to every player. Just to explain a difference between Sepp Piontek and Kurt Nielsen, there's another joke, another funny story about Preben Elkjær. Preben Elkjær has said in a game, Kurt Nielsen was writing in the table, was writing in the whiteboard every name of the player, every name of the starting 11. And in the end, Preben Elkjær was noting there were only 10 names in the whiteboard. So he was asking, hey, Kurt, are we playing with 10 players only? No, Preben. We played in 11, and you are, of course, the number 11. So that give an idea of the improvisation of the coach that was before, and the detailed preparation about every game for Sepp Piontek.
Piontek relied on the foreign-based players, but how did he rate the Danish league players at this point?
Honestly, not too much. The Danish league was not one of the best in Europe. You can see the Danish clubs in the European Cups, they were not effective. Okay, there were some players like the goalkeeper, because after they discussed with Birger Jensen, Birger Jensen was no more in the national team. Denmark had no more good goalkeeper abroad, only one in Sweden maybe. So they needed to have a local goalkeeper. But for the rest, only few players, very young and promising players. In 1 or 2 years, they had a big contract in another country. But in that period, Denmark had about 50 players abroad. So they don't need to. The local first division was like a laboratorium, an experimental laboratorium where the good players were starting to play. And then when they were 21, 22, 23, they moved in another country.
And even in these early stages, it's obvious there's so many talented players being produced by Denmark. What do you think the reason was that previous managers weren't able to get the best out of the group of players that were available?
Lacking of professionality, not much money in the Danish football, because Carlsberg and then the technical sponsor Hummel, they make a big contract with the Danish National Team. and probably no ambition. No ambition to pretend to be one of the best countries in Europe, because Denmark is not a big country as a normal football history before Piontek's era. Only in the Olympic Games in the 60s and in the 48 maybe, Denmark had good results, but never in the World Cup and the European Cup. They never participated to the final rounds. So probably they need a person from not Danish to show the way to change from amateurism to professionalism. And Piontek was the right person in the right moment to change the Danish mentality. But unfortunately, as we will say, Sepp Piontek never won nothing with Danish national team. He was the first to participate to European Cup and World Cup, but the only trophy of the Danish national team history was won by his assistant, Rikard Møller Nielsen. And we will talk about him in the future.
In closing, at the end of this first season, was there a feeling that Danish football was on the right track with Piontek at the helm?
Yes, I think it was because of the solidity of the defense. The defense conceded only one goal in the Nordic Cup against Norway, and conceded 4 goals in the last 2 games in the European Cup qualifications, but they need that. So they needed to be solid and respectable in the defense. So it was the right way to start a new project and then to choose the right players. Of course, a bit of chance, because sometimes the good players, they are injured or they are not free from the club. And in that way, Sepp Piontek has to learn to talk with the clubs like Ajax, Anderlecht, to have free the players. And he started a new good diplomacy with the clubs to have the players free some days before the game, because as I said, Piontek was the first one to put together the players with a training on Monday, for example, after the league game. I think Danish press, Danish ambient was, Danish football milieu was satisfied about the first games in the Piontek's era.
In a future podcast, we'll continue with the following season, 1980-81, and the start of the 1982 World Cup qualifiers. So once again, we would like to thank Mr. Rota for his participation in this interview. As always, feel free to leave questions and comments. For any questions and comments, you may contact me on my blog and Facebook under Soccer Nostalgia. On Twitter, I'm at SP1873. Mr. Paul Whittle can be contacted on his blog, The 1888 Letter, and on Twitter, he's at 1888 Letter. You may also follow the podcast on Spotify and now on Google, Apple, Stitcher, all under Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. Please leave a review, rate, and subscribe if you like the podcast. Mr. Davide Eskelund Rota can be contacted on Facebook, and I've also included a link to his book on the Danish National Team. Again, all this information is listed on the blog and the Spotify listings. So Davide, thank you very much, and hope to continue these discussions in the future.
With pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.